วัสดีค่ะ
Hi guys, how are we doing? Welcome back for another Saturday session of stories. Two stories for you today. The second one is it's a longer story, but there's a good warning in there, though I don't know after listening to the story how it would prevent what happened to that guy, but I don't want to give too much away, so you'll have to wait till the second story. Just before we get into the stories, you might notice a little bit of difference with the soundtrack, me speaking this week, because I'm trying out the radio mics. I recently bought a couple of radio mics, these CJIs, I think they are. Brilliant they are, very good. They're good because I go out and do a lot of videos outside now. I'm working with Marley and we can use radio mics and we don't have to be standing right in front of the camera, right very close to the camera, okay? So I thought I'd try these on the stories. I normally use my old S10, my Samsung S10 with a plug-in button mic, which is quite good sound, but unfortunately I upgraded about a year ago to a Samsung S22 Plus and it doesn't have the regular jack, you know, for a microphone. It has I think they call it a C5 connection. So I've always used the older phone, but I've decided that's got to go now, and I'm now using the S22 Plus. People assume if you've got a YouTube channel, you must have thousands and thousands of pounds of camera equipment. It isn't necessarily true. The cameras in the phones these days are such great quality and you've always got it with you, haven't you? So they're great. So let's hope this mic does its job, and let's hope you can hear me okay. And time to stop the waffle. Right, let's get into the first two stories, and this one it's not too long, but it's fairly interesting. Okay. It was around June of 2015, me and two of my friends 24 years ago at the time decided to go on a trip to Thailand after serving for 3 years in the military. We booked a flight for February 2016 and worked our day jobs while counting the days until the flight. February 2016, we arrived in Bangkok and flew straight to Phuket, barely making it on time for the connection flight. It was already night time when we arrived at our hotel in Patong Beach of Phuket, and we set out to explore the area around the hotel. Luckily for us, the hotel was located near a shopping centre where we could get some food, clothing and other necessities. We booked a trip to Khao Sok National Park from one of the tourism stores, as well as boat rides to Phi Phi Islands, as both destinations were highly recommended. In the following days, we walked a lot and got familiar with the area, visited some of the notoriously overpriced street markets for tourists, open bars with table games, and even went to a massage parlour, which took some courage and mental adjustment. After a couple of days, we went to Khao Sok for a few days. Our Khao Sok group consisted of a young married couple, two French guys that kept themselves to themselves, me and two of my friends, and another gay couple, an older British guy and a younger Russian guy. We chatted with most of the group and our tour guide, who spoke fluent English. We trekked in some of the island's jungles, rode on elephants, visited caves. During the night, we stayed at a fishing village where we got treated to some delicious Thai food and drinks. Our tour guide was playing on a guitar and everyone was having a good time. The gay couple probably had too much to drink and started arguing over something. After the first day, I got terribly sunburnt since I didn't think about bringing the 100 UV sunblock that I needed to avoid this situation. One of my friends had some sunblock and I took it and put some on my sunburns. The older British guy offered his spare bottle of 50 UV sunblock. I took it and thanked him. For some unexplained reason, he started massaging my arms and shoulders. My guess is that he was drunk, and I didn't want to stay and find out what he was planning. So I thanked him for the sunblock and I called it a night. My friends had a good laugh at me and the situation, asking if I'm sure I didn't want him to join us. The next day we returned to Patong after some more sightseeing and got ready to leave for Phi Phi Island. On Phi Phi, we booked a few trips, 7 island trips including the famous Maya Bay, did some kayaking in open water, almost had our food and water stolen by monkeys when we docked at one of the beaches and saw a young tourist who lost her bikini top at the beach. Great day. We limped the steps to Phi Phi's viewpoints, observing the island, and during the night saw a fire performance on the beach next to a party. After a few days, we returned to Patong and booked a ride and a ferry to Koh Phangan to get the full moon party in the evening. We went to Bangla Road, which is the walking street of Patong. As soon as we got there, we were offered to see a certain show involving ping pong balls, and curiosity got the better of us, so we went in. The catch was that you can stay as long as you want if you order something to drink, and the prices were much higher than normal, but it was alright since the show was our goal at the time. At one point, a girl from the bar clung to my friend and tried to persuade him to take her with him. A few moments later, you couldn't see his face as it was buried deep in her chest. We left shortly after when men started coming up to the stage for the second half of the show. Our curiosity was satisfied. The next day, we arrived in Koh Phangan, but when we asked about the full moon party, we were told it was once a month and the next one is in 2 weeks' time. But there is a half moon party the next day, and we went there, and the party was great with lots of people and 3 to 4 different stages, but unfortunately it was cut short at about 2 a.m. The lights shut off and everybody scattered. The next day we found a restaurant by the beach while walking. It was part of a club with a pool lounge and some rooms. We had lunch there and the staff told us we could use the pool and lounge for free. We returned to Patong and went to Tiger World to see and pet the tigers, hired a taxi to pick us up and returned to the hotel. When we returned and one of my friends was getting out of the taxi from the left side on a one-way street, not the main road, another taxi hit and broke the door off our taxi, nearly hitting my friend. Once he stopped and got out, he demanded he pay money for damages because according to him, it was my friend's fault for opening the door. I was furious. It was clearly the other guy's fault and I didn't want to pay him anything. He drove recklessly and hit our taxi. After a few minutes, a policeman came and talked with both taxi drivers. The owner of our hotel also came out to see what is up, and both policemen and the hotel owner advised us to pay and not escalate the situation. My friend that almost got hit by the crazy taxi driver wasn't feeling well and also told me to drop it. I was furious but agreed. Later that day, me and my other friend went to a local pharmacy to get some medicine, and after we returned and gave the medicine to our other friend, he called us to a room, and more specifically to the bathroom, where he was spewing up like a fire hydrant from all directions and made us witness the damage. We were supposed to fly to Bangkok the next day, and while packing, I noticed that I couldn't find my passport. I searched everywhere I could think of, as well as contacting the various hotels we stayed at, with no luck. Luckily for me, I got a copy of the passport from reception and could use it on the flight the next day. I ended up calling the embassy to ask what I need to do and followed their instructions to go to the police station and file a lost passport report, and with it go to the embassy and immigration offices and get a new temporary passport and visa stamp, every step of the way costing me money. I do not recommend losing a passport. The next day we flew to Bangkok and we got a taxi to Pattaya. Our hotel was about 30 minutes walk from the famous walking street, and we stopped by a nearby restaurant on our way. We should have looked at the reviews before we sat down and ordered because it was terrible. The food wasn't great and there were roaches on some of the tables. We just got up, paid and left, never to come back again. Our first time on Pattaya's walking street was shocking. The scale of it, the bars, the clubs and go-go bars, we hadn't seen anything like it yet, and the prices were much higher than what we were used to. We hung around in a few bars and my friend even managed to win us shots of tequila by playing pool. We came back that night and looked up what else is there besides the walking street, and my friend found what I thought at the time was the Holy Grail, and that is a soapy massage, and that's where we headed the next night, and it was all that it was advertised to be. At this point, there were only 2 of us since one of our friends was sick and refused to go with us or to the hospital, saying he'd be fine if he just rests. The next evening, we went to another place with bars called the Devil's Den. On our way there, we stopped by a large area with many small bars and street food vendors. One bar had a pool table and we paid for some beers and played pool with the girls there. One of the girls, who I think was the owner of the bar, was really good and turned out she used to play competitively. She showed us an article with her winning a regional competition. After a while, me and my friend thanked them for the games and beer and got ready to leave, and the girl asked me if I want to go with her to some party. I was afraid that it was not going to end well for me in an unfamiliar area, and I declined her offer and said I had other plans and continued on our way. We reached the Devil's Den and entered one of the bars with the girls dancing on the stage. After a few drinks and some conversation, we headed out back with company. The girl I was with spoke pretty good English, and we had some good conversation and late night aerobics. The next day, we left for Bangkok for the final few days of the trip. Did some shopping. One taxi driver took us to see an Indian shop that makes and sells suits. We just walked in, looked around for 10 seconds and walked out to continue our drive. At night, we went to Soy Cowboy and Nana Plaza just to check out the bars. Talk about hardcore, those girls would suck the gold out of your fillings while you were asleep. That was basically the end of our Thailand adventure. Great memories, which I will cherish forever. Thanks for reading out my story. So, just the experiences of a young man when he went to Thailand on his first vacation. One thing I would say on this story, though, is, you know, it might seem obvious, but wherever you go, you have to take care of your passport. That's your lifeline. You take it out of there, isn't it? So generally what I would advise you to do as soon as you get to your hotel, all the hotels now, even the budget hotels, I've got room safes, in-room safes. Just take a few photocopies of your passport before you leave, a hard copy paper, and obviously take some photographs to keep on your phone. What they're interested in is the visa page and obviously the main page with your photograph. Whenever you check into a hotel, the reason they want your passport is because, one, they have to register it with immigration that you're staying there, and two, they check that your visa is valid, that you're permitted to be in Thailand. So always keep a few copies, you know, hard copy, keep a copy on your phone, and that way, by law actually in Thailand, foreigners are supposed to keep their passports with them at all times. So that if the police do a stop check, then they can look at your passport, but they'll accept your phone. That's fair enough, you know. Okay, right, let's get into this second story. This is quite a lengthy story, hence the reason why there's only 2 stories this week. But the upload's about the same time, so hopefully you'll enjoy this one. Oh, and the other thing to mention on this one, the guy who sent in the story is from the Netherlands, so English isn't his first language. I've cleaned it up as best as I can so it reads nicely, but there might be 1 or 2 bits still in there, but bear with me. I'm Gerard, now 51 years old and from the Netherlands. I've been a regular visitor to Thailand since 2003. Most of the time, I go to Thailand in the months of December, January or February to spend my accumulated holiday and break the long, dark winter days in Europe and escape the boring English Christmas time at home. Especially because I'm single with no family to take care of and any other stuff to take care of either. I suppose during this period of time, in the last decades, I've also taken a few friends or couples with me to the Land of Smiles, which was their first new, faraway, long-distance experience outside of their normal European vacations. They all loved it and still do to this day, and most of them are seasoned travellers themselves now. Most of my single friends back home go on holiday around the same time as me, and without really planning it out, we see and meet each other somewhere during our holidays and spend some time together. Strangely enough, we don't have time to visit each other back home, even though we live about 10 kilometres apart, but we always manage to see each other on our holidays. It's always a great time. This time is no exception. It's Christmas time 2018 and I was in Hua Hin at the time when I received an email from an old friend asking if I was in Thailand. I was. So we exchanged new Thai mobile numbers and gave each other a call. Finally, he asked me if I had any plans for New Year's Eve. He was staying in Pattaya at the moment after a 3-week temple stay in Chiang Mai, going through the process of meditating and retreats for that kind of experience. And now he was in Pattaya for a 2-week Muay Thai training camp. For him, this is sort of a yearly routine. He also mentioned, without saying it, that he wanted me to come to Pattaya to celebrate our New Year's Eve together, go out and have some fun and party together. Especially because he lives like a monk a year round, and the one and only night he drops his guard and breaks all the rules and has a decent time is on New Year's Eve. That's his escape and time to get drunk and act loose and crazy, given his circumstances. Now I have to tell you a little bit about my personal dilemmas. I've been fighting serious addiction problems for the last 30 years, trying to combat my drug and alcohol abuse with various results. I stayed sober from alcohol for 1 year and then I remained clean from drugs for 1.5 years. Up until that point, I had a good run in terms of both drugs and alcohol. My main goal was to get rid of my drug addiction at that time, and I was trying to stay sober from alcohol. to see how far I could go without the use of any substances. For the most part, for your listeners, it might sound ridiculous, but yeah, what can I say? These are my life experiences. Not the wisest ones, but at least I'm trying to better my life. Although I can imagine that for many of you, it would be the route someone else should have taken, like attending AA meetings or rehab programs, there's something stubborn in my head telling me to fix my own problems. I have to say that during holidays, it's much easier to stay off drugs because you become extra aware of the dangers in a foreign country, especially in Thailand. Additionally, you don't have the familiar routes to obtain them without getting into trouble, etc. There's also another factor. When you're on vacation, you're in a different social circle compared to where you are at home, so for some reason you don't think about using as much as you do at home. You're in a different environment with new emotions and experiences, which makes it a lot easier to stay away from abusive substances. But that's about it regarding the background information about my abuse. Now let's quickly move on to my alcohol situation during that period of time. So I was testing myself to see how far I could go without any alcohol, without making any hard promises to myself. Up until this point, I had always been a heavy drinker since the age of 20, and up until this point, I've only managed to make a serious attempt to stay sober for 1.5 years, which was back in 2014. The thing is, the reason I've been able to get away with any substance abuse so far is the fact that I'm also a very dedicated athlete. This passion for sports started in my childhood when I began practicing judo at the age of 7. I quickly realised that I had some talent for it and incorporated daily training sessions into my routine. I also maintained my cardiovascular fitness by running. As I grew older, I started weightlifting and achieved good results with it, leading to a well-built physique. This pattern continued throughout my life. I exercised on a daily basis until the age of 48, appearing to be 10 years younger than my actual age. Nobody could see or notice anything abnormal about me. However, behind this facade, I was heavily addicted to drugs and an even more excessive drinker. It had reached a point where alcohol no longer affected me. I could easily consume several beers and a bottle of wine, wake up after a short night's sleep and go for a 9-mile run in the morning. This description highlights the extent of my addiction. In 2018, during a holiday, I had reached a point where I had been sober for 3.5 months. I then agreed to my friend's invitation to go to Pattaya to party. I embarked on my rented motorbike and set off for Pattaya. The journey turned out to be quite an adventure in itself. Oh boy, did I underestimate the distance between Hua Hin and Pattaya for a motorbike ride. It took me a grueling 7 hours, with some parts of the route presenting real challenges, especially around the highways in Bangkok where motorbikes were not supposed to go. Toll booth staff redirected me to take slippery dirt paths along the highway, leading me to slums where it seemed like they had never seen a foreigner on a motorbike under those bridges. Despite all the obstacles, the trip was entirely worth it, providing an amazing adventure and experience. Finally, I arrived in Pattaya late in the evening on the 30th of December 2018. At the hotel where my friend was staying, I desperately needed a long hot shower to wash off all the dirt and exhaust fumes from the 7-hour journey. You can hardly imagine how much black water comes off your body after such a trip. Anyways, here we go. Freshened up, I have some catching up to do with my friend after not seeing him for 2.5 years. We exchanged some long stories that night. After a really good and long sleep, I woke up the next day. My friend and I had lunch for breakfast and started to make a relaxed plan for how we could spend our time on New Year's Eve. We decided to split up, each going on our own way for the afternoon, trying to find any good options and calling each other if we found something good. I also scanned the internet but quickly came to the conclusion that we were way too late to book something or get tickets for any special party. In the afternoon, I drove through Walking Street where everybody was busy stocking the bars with alcohol. Then I saw a lady put up a sign with information for a rooftop bar party at some bar where you can look out over the whole bay area of Pattaya. After I could have a quick peek upstairs, I thought, wow, nice, this was meant to be. The entrance tickets were a fixed price of 2,000 baht each, which included an open bar. By this time, I made up my mind. I'm going to surprise my friend, so I didn't call him in between and I kept this party a secret. I also made the decision there and then to drink alcohol tonight. Why not? Everything turned out great. So satisfied, I got myself a fresh haircut. In the beginning of the evening, I met my friend again to hear what he had in store for us, but he had to admit he couldn't find anything for the upcoming night, and I still played along saying I also hadn't found anything useful. We decided to go with the flow and just see what would happen that night. The first thing of the evening was to get ourselves a relaxing massage. Before we knew it, an hour had already passed. We decided to go back to our hotel, take a shower and get properly dressed and go out for dinner. We ended up at a restaurant set up on a beach. It all looked perfect. Good food, a nice setting, well-dressed people. In short, the perfect kick-off for the night ahead. As the time crawled forward, 11 p.m, I started to unveil my plan. I told my friend I had a surprise for both of us and that it was time to take action. I told my friend to follow me on the motorbike on our way to Walking Street. So off we went. We parked the motorbikes close to the rooftop bar where I got the tickets from. You know those motorbike parking places in the small alleyways leading to Walking Street. Only it was packed, and I mean really packed. I had never experienced such a crowded situation before, not even when I stayed in Pattaya for 3 months a decade ago. Wow, this was pure chaos. After 20 minutes or so, we managed to find somewhere to park our motorbikes and started walking up to the rooftop bar, with me reminding my friend to follow me. He still had no clue about what we were about to do. When we arrived at Walking Street through this small back alley, I could see the rooftop bar just across the street, but it was so crowded. I think I had never seen so many people in one street before. I started trying to cross to the other side of the street. I looked back over my shoulder and I realised I couldn't see my friend any longer. How was that possible? In about 1 minute we lost sight of each other. I lost my friend, damn. I started scanning the environment to see if I could find my friend. Of course I couldn't. So I decided to go back to the motorbikes, the place where we had last spoke to each other. He wasn't there either. Now what? How could I be so stupid not to tell him our destination? It was all part of the surprise, of course. But it backfired really badly now. I tried to call him, but you know how it goes in crowded places. No reception at all. Everybody's trying to use their phones at the same time. The lines were totally dead. I ended up taking photos of the rooftop bar and sending messages to my friend, informing him that I would be there waiting for him at the bar, hoping he would receive these messages before midnight. But there I was, standing on the rooftop bar, having driven about 400 kilometers on a motorbike to party with my friend and have this big surprise party overlooking the Pattaya Bay area at midnight, only without my friend. Well, I can tell you, I felt really disappointed and down. I felt very lonely. New Year's Eve was in full effect with fireworks everywhere, beautiful views and people partying all around me. All happy and having a great time, except for me. It only took a few minutes before some people around me noticed that something was wrong. After explaining the situation I was in, I quickly got adopted by an international company with lots of people from all over the world. A young lady advised me to let the alcohol flow and forget about the negative thoughts and experiences, so I did. I asked the bartender for a gin and tonic, and that's when things took off. I have to tell you, I had a really good time with my new made friends, and they took really good care of me. But after 2.5 hours into the rooftop party, everything slowed down a little and most of the party goers started moving elsewhere downstairs to Walking Street. So I did the same. I started roaming through Walking Street and there was a great atmosphere with good vibes everywhere. By this time I was feeling quite tipsy. There were drinks here and there, shots everywhere. A little tired but still having fun, I decided to hit the nightclubs in Walking Street. It was around 4 o'clock when I spotted my long lost friend on the dance floor. I walked up to him and I tried to get an explanation from him about what happened before, how we lost each other and what actions he took to try and find me. At this point he was quite hammered. He could barely walk and looked wasted. I also didn't get the reaction or answers I was looking for. It turned out he didn't take any steps to try and find me before. His point of view was that as soon as we lost each other, he made his own plan and got drunk as soon as possible. He didn't even make any effort to look for me around the motorbikes or in the surroundings where we got separated. We went straight to the first place that came to his mind, which was the Club Insomnia. That would never have crossed my mind because we never spoke or talked about that club. Anyways, I noticed I got a bit angry at him, but I didn't want to spoil the good vibe I was in. So I left him and I went back to the street. Meanwhile, the party slowed down significantly and it was a lot less crowded outside. That made me realise I had enough for the night. I was tired, I had drunk enough, and the party was pretty much over by that point. So I walked back to the motorbike parking. After a serious search, I found my bike, and that's where the real story starts. I tried to get onto my bike drunk. That must have been a silly view from a distance, a stumbling drunken man trying to get on his motorbike. It must have been quite a sight for the police officer standing somewhere in the alleyway waiting for victims. I tried to start my motorbike, and as soon as I did that, I felt I was grabbed firmly by my arm. I saw another hand immediately grabbing my keys out of my hands, and I was dragged off the motorbike. Here I was, eye to eye with a police officer in a firm hold. Could I identify myself was his first question. Luckily, or unfortunately, I had my passport with me. That was confiscated in a second, as well as just like the keys of my motorbike. I felt the ground disappear under my feet, and I felt instantly sick, real sick, in a way I'd never experienced before. This, together with an unimaginable feeling of guilt and anxiety, I was dragged along the alley around the corner to this familiar wooden police box office at the road crossing near Walking Street. There was a queue of what seemed to be only Farangs. For some reason, I was dragged into this office immediately, no queue for me. There I stood with 3 officers in front of me in this small office, very intimidating. I had to put my wallet on the table and empty the rest of my pockets. They were going through my belongings, looking dead serious back at me, talking in Thai to each other, when one of them opened the conversation with me. I had to do an alcohol test, and we all know how that turned out. The officer started to talk again. "You're in serious trouble, mister. You go to jail." "Jail?" I asked, if I didn't hear it correctly. I almost fainted for the first time in my life. They all started to laugh in such a ridiculous way, I even got more scared. "Yes, you go to jail for 2 weeks. Wow, what? How do you get out of here?" Then I had a clear moment. Through the years, you hear some stories and pick up some information which came to me at that moment. Try to buy your way out of this, I thought. I don't know the exact details on how to start a bribe, but I started it anyway. No, I'm not going to jail. I've got my flight to catch home to the Netherlands in 2 days' time. I'll do whatever it takes, but I not go to jail. "Is there any possible way then to go to the police station rather than jail?" I asked. Then first were very strict. "No," was the answer, "you go to jail." But I kept pushing for another outcome. They started talking again. In Thai language, of course. Then all of a sudden, I got pushed out of the box by one of the officers. He started guiding me away from the crowd outside. He asked if I could use my ATM card. This was also remarkable, probably because they also went through my wallet with the inspection they made before and found out I didn't have that much money left for them. But the officer demanded an equivalent amount to 750 euros in Thai baht. That's exactly the maximum amount of money I can withdraw in one time. One time a day on my card. It was like they already knew this. So there I was, walking with a police officer again, and in a firm grip, I was directed to a Pacific ATM a few streets further on. I took out the maximum amount I was allowed, but then the following thing occurred. I didn't get any cash out of this ATM. Everything up to this point looked very smooth. The only issue was that I didn't receive my full amount of cash. I was confused. I tried it a second time, but it was rejected. The ATM machine told me that I'd reached my maximum daily limit. How was this possible? I didn't understand this situation and became a little desperate. I was so close to freedom, but for some reason I couldn't withdraw my money from the ATM. At some point, I started to think the ATM was empty. I don't know exactly how it happened, but I managed to reach a point where the police officer let me go to get the money on my own. Maybe he received a phone call, or for some reason the other realised that I wouldn't go anywhere because they had my passport at the booth. So I was able to go on my own and look for another option. I had a backup credit card in my hotel room which I retrieved. Within 20 minutes I found a different ATM and I tried my credit card. This time I successfully withdrew my money. I went back to the police office. The officers were quite busy dealing with many other situations involving foreigners. Eventually one officer outside recognised me as the person he had escorted to the ATM machine. They let me back into the office. Here I was again with the same 3 officers as before. One of them opened his notebook where I had to place some money quickly. He closed the book and pointed me towards the exit of the booth. I think it was the alcohol affecting me again because all of a sudden I felt good but also brave. I nearly messed it up a second time by asking for a receipt. Of course I couldn't get one. I even got more foolish by asking if I could take a photo of the officer as proof that I paid the dues. One officer stepped forward, became very serious. Without saying much, it was clear to me that I shouldn't continue in this matter and I should get out of the office, and that's exactly what I did. I even left the motorbike where it was parked and walked back to my hotel. At first, I felt relieved, but later when I got back to the room, reality set in. I checked my withdrawal transactions on my laptop and I saw that both transactions went through. I was sick, both mentally and physically, as it was a night filled with many emotions and a lot of stress. The effects of the alcohol were wearing off and I felt pretty depressed about the whole night. The day after, I tried to locate the ATM machine that had failed to dispense my cash, only to discover that it was no longer there. So I believe this entire incident was premeditated. It appeared to be a type of mobile ATM that was now untraceable. I'd never heard or read about such a story before, but it definitely happened to me. The only one positive aspect of this ordeal is I reached a point in my life where I realised how fortunate I was. The realisation extended all the times I'd driven under the influence. Fortunately, I never caused any accidents, narrowly escaped a few close calls with the police in the past, but this time it all hit me. In total, I'd paid €1,550 to avoid imprisonment. Regardless of whether it was police provocation or intimidation, I was tired of losing money in this manner and the situation felt too tense. I view it as a moment when I had to face the consequences for all the risks I'd taken throughout my life with drugs and alcohol. Since then, I've been completely sober, quitting cold turkey to this day. No drugs, no alcohol. I no longer have to worry about how to get home when I'm intoxicated, and I have put an end to foolish alcohol-related behaviour, such as thinking that driving a scooter is harmless and that I can get away with it because everyone else does. By the way, a few months ago you narrated a similar story about a guy who got caught and went to prison for a few days before his court appearance. At that time I heard this story and thought to myself that I would rather have my own story despite the uncertainty of not knowing how long I would be in jail. Even though I lost more money, all in all it had to happen. Lesson learnt. Okay, that's quite a strange story with regards to the ATM. I've never heard of a scam like that, and I was trying to guess what kind of happened. So there's a couple of scenarios that I've come up with, okay? One is that because he was drunk, he went back and he thought he went to the location where the ATM machine was, but it was actually the wrong location. You know, sometimes you can be so sure of something, but it's not true. So maybe he went back thinking, okay, this is where I took out the money, but because he was drunk and he'd been asleep and gone back, it was just totally wrong, hence no ATM. That's one scenario I've come up. Scenario number 2 is that unlike the UK and I'm guessing the rest of the world, the ATM machines are not cemented into a building. You know, you can see them, they're freestanding in Thailand in a lot of locations. They just plug them in and put them on the steps of a 7-Eleven, something like that. There could have been some collusion with maybe some corrupt bank guy who had this machine put up for the evening, knowing it would rake them in a lot of money and then it had to disappear in the morning. That could have been another scenario, who knows. I don't really know the answer to it. As I say, I've never come across this one before. I know there are quite a few scams, especially in Pattaya. They have it happens all around the world now, but they put false fronts on the ATM machines and your card gets cloned or scammed, whatever. What I always say to people is if you're going to withdraw money, try and take it from either outside of 7-Eleven where it's all cameraed up, or maybe the ATM machines that are on the bank, not the freestanding machines that are in the middle of tourist areas, because they're the ones that tend to get targeted by thieves. The only other thing I'd say on this story, again, reiterating on the passport, if he'd left his passport in his hotel safe when they asked for it, if he'd just showed them a photocopy or a photograph on his phone, then they couldn't have taken it. That's a really big bargaining chip for anybody who wants to extract money from you, because, you know, as I said earlier, your passport is a lifeline, and if you've lost your passport, you'll do absolutely everything to get it back, because you've got to have your passport, right? So again, you know, it's quite unwise to take your passport out. And just lastly on this passport thing, some people might leave comments and say, well, you have to have your passport when you go to a change booth and change money. You don't. They'll accept a driving license. If you're, for instance, in the UK, we have well, every country in the world, you have your driving license. Leave your passport in your safe, take your driving license with you. When you go to a change booth, they'll accept that as proof of identity. Okay, all right, so that's it once again for the stories this week. I hope you enjoyed this week's stories, and thanks to the two guys who sent them in. I'll be around for the live stream on Friday as usual, 9 p.m. Thai time, 10:45 for the member stream. Until then, take care, and whatever you're doing, stay safe. I'll catch up with you soon.